their Democrat governor wouldn't let them get together, wouldn't let them assemble in their own darn state. They had to go to Texas to get freedom. And of course, Pelosi kept your capital that you pay for, where you get to go to petition your member of Congress to redress your grievances. She kept it closed. You talk about tackling the First Amendment, and on and on we can go. But the most important liberty you have, in my judgment, is your right to talk. Because if you can't speak, you can't practice your faith, you can't share your faith, you can't petition your government, you don't really have freedom of press. I mean, that's the most important one, and that's the one they go after. So we've all experienced that. The way the left operates, if you don't agree with them, they're gonna come after you. They're gonna call you a fascist or racist. They're not gonna let you. That's the cancel culture mob, and we've all had to live through some of the crazy things the left does. But that's the most important thing, and this committee, the Judiciary Committee, is supposed to be the committee that protects the Constitution and the liberties we enjoy under the Constitution and in the Bill of Rights. So that, to me, is the most important thing.
So I want to ask you a couple questions on the First Amendment. One very important one. The press loves to give itself awards, Pulitzer prizes, prizes at the correspondence dinner. Sometimes it comes with a statue and some prize money and a lot of acclaim by their peers. And by the way, good journalists should be rewarded because they're a rare thing. There were some people at the New York Times and the Washington Post and other places that got Pulitzer prizes for covering this lie called Russian collusion. Do you think they should give those awards back? Are they worthy of a subpoena?
Yeah, it's. It's just the way it works today. Someone will, tell a lie. The press will report the lie. Big tech will amplify the lie. When you try to tell the truth, they call you racist. They call you fascist. The President of the United States stood in front of Independence Hall and called half the country fascist. So that's how they operate, and they give themselves awards when they follow that template. But the facts have a way of coming out, and the truth has a way of getting public. You talked about this. You talked about the Russia related to the attack on President Trump and the whole Mueller thing, but you think about this lie about the laptop being a Russian hack.
Are you talking about the laptop from hell?
Yeah, the hack and leak operation. The now famous line from that letter that 51 former Intel officials signed, famous line which says the Biden laptop story has all the earmarks of a Russian information operation. And what I've said is no, the information operation was run on us by our government, and it's frightening to understand what happened there, because that was true, and the FBI, I think, frankly, knew it at the time, and yet they allowed this and I think fostered and promoted this false narrative literally just days and weeks before the most important election we have, which is election of President of the United States. So, yeah, but they still give themselves awards for giving. That's the kind of collusion we actually need to get to the bottom of, right? Mm-hmm. And I see KT McFarland here. KT, would you stand up? KT was a victim. KT was a victim of the weaponization from our government against people who honorably serve, and they try to destroy you, they try to bankrupt you. KT, you're a survivor. Thank you for surviving all that and serving your country. Anybody here believe in God? Woo! By the way, in America, you're allowed to believe in God or not believe in God, and this is the great thing about our freedoms. Mm-hmm. You talk about the weaponization of our government. It's ours. You pay for it. Do you realize that? You pay for all of it. You're the boss. They're not the boss of you. They shouldn't be spying on you. They shouldn't be undermining you. There was a memo leaked from one of the field offices of the FBI that is the smoking gun on trying to go after Catholics who are radical in their beliefs. Radical is the FBI's word, because they're zealously supporting the right to life of the unborn child. And they thought the overturning of Roe v. Wade was a wonderful moment, as you agree and I agree, but that was a wonderful moment of the Supreme Court going back to constitutional order. Why is the FBI going after people of faith because they think going to church is radical? Yeah, it's the Richmond field office, the memorandum on if you're a traditional Catholic, that somehow your domestic
domestic extremists, which was just scary. How many watched, you made me think of this, how many watched the State of the Union a few weeks ago?
It was tough.
The best, I get it, I was there. I always say it's the closest thing to pageantry we have in America is the State of the Union address, so I always go. But I thought the best line wasn't from President Biden, the best line was from the response from Governor Huckabee Sanders when she said...
Yes, that was amazing.
When she said the divide in America today is normal versus crazy, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much, crazy is thinking that boys should compete against girls in sports. Crazy is thinking you defund the police. Crazy is thinking that you let non-citizens vote, which D.C. just passed. Crazy is this, you maybe remember this moment in a hearing, my colleague and friend Dan Bishop from North Carolina, good lawyer on
we like him and he's going to be here.
Yeah, he's a good man. And he said in the hearing, the Democrat witness, he actually asked the Democrat witness, he said, can men get pregnant? And the Democrat witness, she said, yes. And the best part of the video, if you watch it, was Dan's response. He kind of went, okay, that's crazy. Crazy is letting what is a Chinese spy balloon come clear across the country for a week and then shooting it down, versus the ones that we didn't know what they were, to shoot them down. So you could keep going on and on. And crazy is when you have an FBI that says people who practice their faith are somehow extremists, when we have the First Amendment, which is supposed to protect, and that is the first liberty mentioned in the very First Amendment. So yeah, this is frightening stuff, and it's why we have to, I think, get the facts on the table, as I said before, and then pass legislation. Here's one piece of legislation I think makes sense. I would bet every one of those 51 former Intel officials who signed that letter, that now famous letter, I would bet every one of them still has a security clearance. Why? I think it's for their personal benefit. I think that's something that has value, and frankly, they probably make money off the idea that they can get information, and many of them are contributors on various TV networks. So why should they have a security clearance? That's maybe one of the things we propose as legislation to help remedy some of the problems.
So I don't want to slur this powerful person, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, but you're considered a conspiracy theorist if you say there's no Russian collusion. Donald Trump didn't make billions of dollars in Russia. That's a lie. You get called a conspiracy theorist because all the head of the IC agencies come out and say, oh, no, there's truth here. Same thing on the laptop from hell. Oh, no, this is Russian disinformation. At what point do the left-leaning leftist media, which is out to attack each one of you every single day, but more important than that, they're feeding you lies? Where do you find the truth in all this? If you're called a conspiracy theorist, when you can see what's clearly true to be true, you turn on your television set, you read the New York Times or the Washington Post, and you're told that it's a lie, that it's a conspiracy theory. How can you have a democracy in this situation? Well, I see Sean Spicer. Sean, I know we can turn on to your show, okay? Yeah. I got that for sure, okay?
Good to see you.
5 o'clock, I got it, okay.
I think the truth has a way of always eventually getting out there. We've seen that this week. The Department of Energy just told us, oh, by the way, it wasn't a bat to a pangolin to a hippopotamus to Joe Rogan. It was actually started in a lab, right? So, and yet last night in the Senate, unanimous, I think the bill passed unanimously, Senator Hawley's bill, which said, we want to know all the information you have, government, on how the classified, we want to know that information, how this, what was going on, and how this thing actually started in a lab. Which, by the way, why did they lie to us about the origin of the virus? Why did they lie to us about gain-of-function research? And why did they lie to us about natural immunity? Think about it. I remember I asked Dr. Birx this question. Dr. Birx this question, I said...
you're supposed to stay 6 feet away from me. I don't know what you're doing there.
I said, this is like a year ago to hearing. Dr. Birx was in there. You remember her? She was the lady with the scarves, right? So I asked her a question in this hearing. I said, Dr. Birx, when the Biden administration told us that the vaccinated couldn't get the virus, were they guessing or lying?
Wow.
Either one, our government's supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people, so tell we the people the truth. Mm-hmm. We're big boys and girls. We're Americans.
That's right.
Tell us the truth. Yeah. Why so many lies, whether it's Whether it's the Russia stuff and President Trump, whether it's how all the, I mean, you think about with the virus, almost every single thing they told us turned out not to be true.
That's right.
Right.
Said it wasn't our tax dollars used in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Yes,
Right.
it was. They said it wasn't gain of function research. Sure looks like it was. They said it didn't start in the lab. Sure looks like it did. Even the Department of Energy and the FBI say that, right? They said the vaccinated couldn't get it. The vaccinated couldn't transmit it. There was no such thing as natural immunity. Like, there's like 7 lies right there. Just tell us the truth.
Right,
and then the same thing, again, but the truth in the end will win, in spite of what the left and the mainstream press and big tech how they try to massage it and change it. The truth wins out in the end.
So I had a wise old man tell me one time he gets up every morning and he reads 2 things. He reads the Washington Post and he reads the Bible to get both sides of the story.
Yeah, exactly.
If you flip a coin, we all did. I didn't do very good. My daughter, by the way, is here from college, and it brings me back to taking statistics in college. By the way, I didn't do that well. But if you flip a coin, you got obviously 50% chance heads, 50% tails. So if they're always wrong about the big things, the media, the mainstream media, this leftist media, if they're wrong about all the big things all the time, you'd be better off flipping a coin. There has to be some intent to this. Right. You can't just always get it wrong and then get an award.
Yeah, no, it's the template. The left tells the lie, as I said before. Big media reports it, big tech amplifies it. You try to tell the truth, they call you names. But in the end, if you persevere, the truth will come out. And the one thing I say all the time is that the only thing we get wrong about these, like I remember with the whole Trump-Russia thing, and initially there was a handful of us in Congress and there were a handful of journalists who were saying this thing makes no sense. What they're accusing President Trump of, and the fact that the dossier and all this makes no sense. And the one thing that we learn always in these things is the only thing we get wrong is it's always worse than we thought.
Right.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
kind of even, I guess, more frightening in some ways. But if you just stick to it, keep presenting the facts, in the end it prevails. And the American people we got all these folks here, support the conservative principle, make our country the best. The American people figure it out. And I love the fact that our government it's about we the people. And we the people tend to get it right.
Right.
Okay,
right.
so couple of really important topics to go through. We have the laptop from hell, which also leads to amazing corruption that's occurred around the president's son and his business practices. And then you have the fact that, we've told by our own government that there's nothing to see here. Then you have this, is this the most incompetent cabinet group that we've ever seen? I mean, whenever there's a problem, they don't rush to the problem, they run away from the problem. This impeachment word, which we all hate because it's always used, it seems like, against our side. You know, the House has a lot of power, the Senate has power when it comes to these questions. How do you handle all the wrongdoing within this context of, for instance, Secretary of Department of Homeland Security and this open border and 5 million illegals? How do we make it stop?
Well, we were down there last week. We were in Yuma, Arizona, saw firsthand how serious this is, and we've been to the border several times in Texas. So the biggest problem is, as I think, as everyone in this place knows, is what's happening to our border. What's happened the last 2 years is intentional. There's no other way to interpret it. It's premeditated. It's done purposefully. And it's why we've had 5 million illegal migrants come into the country, because on day one, remember, Joe Biden on day one made 3 key changes. He said, we are no longer going to build the wall. We're going to get rid of the Remain in Mexico policy while we evaluate people's asylum claims, and we're not going to deport anyone who comes. So if you're coming, you can't fault people for wanting to come to the greatest country ever. So if you're coming, the person knows we won't have to wait in Mexico. There's no wall to get over. And oh, by the way, when we get in, we're not going to get deported. Well, Shazam, everyone's going to come, right? But he made that decision on day one. What we tried to do last week was show why it matters. We know how it happened. We know how to fix it. You got to enforce the law and put back in place those policies that were working in the previous administration. But why it matters is that's what we heard from last week. And maybe the best witness we had was the hospital administrator in Yuma, who said there are been multiple times where American families right there in the Yuma area couldn't go to the hospital, to the maternity ward to deliver children because there were so many migrants. And God bless you, we're going to help them. They're going to deliver kids. Obviously the hospital is going to help them, but they had to go to Phoenix or San Francisco or San Diego, excuse me. And that's all coming to the country, the rest of the country.
So is this idea, some of your colleagues are saying we should impeach Mayorkas?
Many are saying that.
Yeah.
What I've said is, look, that's a decision that the entire conference has to make with Speaker McCarthy and the whole team. Does he warrant? Is it warranted? Certainly.
Can I ask you all, what do you think? Impeach Mayorkas?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we plan on passing legislation to in the next 4 or 5 weeks out of the committee that we think, if implemented, and again, that's the fundamental problem, if implemented would fix the situation, but I just don't think this administration is going to do it.
When we had this battle to see who the next speaker was going to be, one of the pleasant parts of that, despite the mainstream media getting it wrong, sometimes you have family squabbles, and sometimes something good comes out of it.
Yep.
All those images, by the way, I only watch C-SPAN. I try not to watch too much other stuff. But the images you could see coming out of the floor was some, pretty far on the left members working with some people pretty far on the conservative side in our conference, and they started coming together and talking because they had a shared commonality in the fact that anybody in leadership, I mean, Nancy Pelosi did amazingly things in leadership that no one's done to try to stop free speech in the House of Representatives. They had a commonality of, hey, what's so wrong about having amendments and people being able to offer things? Do you see that as an outgrowth of what happened with that?
I do. I think there's some positive there. There's in the history of our great country.
Come on, say something nice about Sheila Jackson Lee. There's got to be something.
Yeah, I always say in the history of our country, only about 12,000 individuals have had the opportunity to serve in the United States Congress. Yeah. And it is truly a privilege. And I think members take it that way. And when they're, as a member representing the folks back home, the approximately 800,000, they want to make sure they have an opportunity to offer amendments, to be engaged in the debate, and function the way the founders envisioned particularly our House of Representatives, how it was supposed to function. So some of the rule changes that we got in place through that struggle, I think are pretty positive.
Yeah, I feel actually very positive that the pain of the situation to get to Kevin McCarthy as Speaker has set us up to be much more successful as a conference. It's honest, and it's been public. But yet there's also responsibility. You talk about the thousands of people who have served in the House. Should you be allowed to use your chairmanship to just say and do anything and purport these lies? Adam Schiff said over and over again on national TV, on the floor of the House of Representatives, in different hearings, that he knew of proof of Russian collusion. And he continued with this effort to hobble Donald Trump's presidency and to make false claims. At what point is there a responsibility of a new House majority to make sure that kind of stuff never happens again?
Right.
Well, we're gonna focus on facts and truth. You're right. I think many of the things that the Democrats said about President Trump and they did say about...
To say that you have proof of Russian collusion, you'd have to be lying.
Yeah, it was just not accurate. So we're gonna work hard to make sure we don't do that, and we have the facts to back it up. But again, I point this out. In spite of all that, think about what President Trump got accomplished.
Amazing. Yeah.
I mean, the idea that they attacked him so much... I may have told this story here last year, but early in the administration, I remember Mark Meadows and I were in the West Wing there, early in President Trump's administration. I think we remember in Jared's office or some office, and they had a big whiteboard on the wall. You've seen the same.
I know his office. That was Steve Bannon's office.
Maybe it was.
Yeah.
So a big whiteboard on the wall, and they had literally listed every single promise that President Trump had made to the American people in the.
And the problem with Trump is it was a really long list.
It was, but they were checking them off. As he, cutting taxes, reducing regulations, getting out of the Iran deal, getting out of the Paris Climate Accords, conservatives on the court. You just go down the list, building a wall. That's how you're supposed to govern. So in spite of everything they did to him, he got things done because he focused on doing what he said he would do and sticking to the Constitution and doing things the way you're supposed to in our country. That's the attitude I think we have in the House. Under Speaker McCarthy's leadership. And that's the attitude we have to bring to bear, because if we don't have that attitude, as mean and tough as the left is, we're not going to make it. We've got to have that attitude if we're going to take on the left and what they're trying to do in the country.
One final question, because we're over our time, and I've seen you control the time on your committee. You're pretty rigid, by the way. You make people talk fast. This whole idea of big tech, censoring us, shadow banning us. Basically, I know it's a legal argument, but the American people believe that that's an abridgment of their First Amendment rights, even if a lawyer will say, well, give you some kind of out clause on that. What are you going to do as the chairman to make sure the disgusting tracking the American people, intimidating the American people. These platforms are pushing woke. What are you going to do to stop it?
Well, Jonathan Turley used the term censorship by surrogate because you had the government, you had the FBI agent Elvis Chan sending emails to the big tech companies, Twitter, Facebook, and Google, to the big tech companies saying, we think these accounts, these tweets violate your terms of service. That's crazy. Right? That was going on. And then Twitter would take down those accounts or use their term visibility filtering. They'd shadow ban and do things to these tweets. And so, yeah, this is wrong. We're working with Energy and Commerce. You have to look at Section 230, transparency, all that stuff.
Section 230, like let them get sued when they do these
all these things have to be examined. And in legislation, the legislation will probably come out of Energy and Commerce. But, yeah, we got to do that. We got to do because I think it's the right term. Censorship by surrogate, the government pressuring, priming these social media companies to shape and mold the message instead of just letting, again, we the people get the facts and the information and decide for ourselves.
Well, I have a feeling that all of you are rooting you on, and the chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee take on that fight. Jim Jordan, tell them what you think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you all. Thank you all. Have a great day. Have a great week.
All right.
Congratulations, AARP. Over $1 billion. Wow. That's what AARP was paid in corporate royalties in a single year, totaling over $9 billion through the last decade. Most of it derived from United Health, one of the nation's largest health insurance corporations. So wait, AARP earned billions partnering with big insurers while also lobbying Congress on changes to Medicare? AARP advocates for who exactly these days? Paid for by American Commitment.
What's up, everyone? Good morning, everyone in the chat. You're watching Your Freedom Rising. We're watching CPAC. Guys, I also have this t-shirt design. You guys are wanting t-shirts? I can ship these for $20. It's Moon Landing and God We Trust. I'm still working on the website, so I'm going to pin in the chat my email if you guys want to purchase a t-shirt.
Ladies and gentlemen, up next, Congress learns the art of the deal. Please welcome, from Pennsylvania, Congressman Scott Perry. From South Carolina, Congressman Ralph Norman. And your moderator, host of the Todd Starnes Show, Todd Starnes.
Let's do it. Okay. Well, good morning. And I'm wondering, do we have any gun-toting, Bible-clinging, patriotic Americans in the room today? Woo! I kind of figured that might be the case. You know, I want to say something before we get our panel discussion underway. I've been thinking about Comatose Joe. And
oh, gosh.
I think that Joe Biden would make a better president of Ukraine. Right? Just think about this.
For real.
Joe Biden is paving their roads. He's providing pension money. He's giving them, what, about $250 million a year and securing their sovereign border. Meanwhile, the real president of the United States was in East Palestine, Ohio, greeting first responders and giving out quarter pounders with cheese.
Yeah.
No doubt freedom is under attack, and today we are honored to have two brave American patriots with us from the House Freedom Caucus. And gentlemen, we want to say thank you for the great work you're doing. Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, Congressman Perry, I want to start with you. We talk a lot about Joe Biden's failures in the White House, but I think you have a different take on that.
Well, I think that we oftentimes as conservatives, as Republicans, as just citizens see them as failures, but I think we need to understand and view it differently. They are successes to them because their goal is actually the globalization of the United States of America, destruction of our sovereignty, and so this is all intentional. The things that you see happening are not necessarily incompetence, maybe in the president himself because he's got his own issues, but the people around him, this is all by design. This is on purpose. This is intentional. This is planned. They are not failures to them. So we need to view it differently, and we need to understand we're not only in a philosophical battle, but we're also in a spiritual battle for the soul of our country and to save this republic, and that's how we need to approach it.
Now, Congressman Norman, that would make sense. I mean, with all the chaos that we're seeing in the culture right now coming out of Washington, D.C., the attacks on the family, the attacks on victims of crime, where now we're looking at criminals now becoming the victims thanks to a lot of these far-left district attorneys out there.
Well, it is, Todd. And first of all, let me just, one, it's an honor to be up here with General Perry, but it's such an honor to look out and to see everybody here. You're not sitting at home. You could be anywhere. You're at CPAC. You're willing to take action. And it couldn't come at a better time. I will tell you, the country's in trouble. What's happened in the last 2 years has been, as Scott said, it's evil. What we're seeing, if you were in our position, it's flat out evil. It's an attack on our democracy. It's an attack on our children. And it's an attack, pure and simple, on freedom. That's why it's so important to be engaged. That's why it's so important to say, we're not taking it. We're not going to be silenced. And Todd, the left knows no bounds. They are taking it to us. It's a new day now with what's happened in Congress. We're willing to fight the fight. We're willing to get involved. We really don't care what the press says.
I like to hear that. And I think that was illustrated with the decision over who was going to be the next Speaker of the House. And you guys were taking bullets from everybody, but you stood your ground. And Congressman Perry, how are we doing right now? So far, so good?
Well, so far, so good. As an Army aviator, we know that when we're taking flak, that means we're over the target. And look, we were just not going to allow the status quo to continue. We were just simply not going to allow it. Our leadership expected us to come in and generally take Speaker Pelosi's rules and continue to run the House of Representatives that way. We went early on. Folks like me and Congressman Norman went early in the summer and said to the leader at the time, we said, look, we're going to win the majority, we think. But we cannot keep running this place the same way. The status quo is not going to work, and we need different outcomes for the American people. And quite honestly, they patted us on the head and sent us out the door, and we just kept going back with a smile on our face, and no one wanted to talk to us. You know when they wanted to talk to us? I think it was about November 9th, the day after the election, and that big majority they were supposed to get was very narrow. And you know what they needed? They needed Mr. Norman's vote for Speaker. They needed Perry's vote for Speaker. And we said, well, why don't we talk about some things? And so far, so good, Todd. But look, liberty requires eternal vigilance. And so Ralph and I have committed ourselves to stay in the fight. We don't comport ourselves every day for re-election. We comport ourselves every single day to save the republic, and that's what's important.
Congressman Norman and then Congressman Perry, I just want you to jump in after his remarks here. We have seen the weaponization of the federal government. This started under Barack Hussein Obama when they sent the IRS after people like Billy Graham and pro-life leaders and the Tea Party. And now we're seeing once again the weaponization again of the federal government going after pro-lifers and conservatives. How big of an issue is this, and what are you guys doing in the Freedom Caucus to push back?
Well, it's a huge issue. I mean, and they're serious about this. I mean, when you have Merrick Garland, he was on the stand yesterday. Some of the things he says are just lies. He's a hypocrite. Same thing with Mayorkas on the border. And they're serious. Every agency of government under the Biden administration, and y'all, it's not Biden himself.
Right.
The cabal that's running this country, where it be, the Barack Obama's protege, whether it be Rice, all of them are making policy. It's not him. He's not in his right mind. But luckily, the good news is, since we've taken over the House, every department has got subpoena power. And what you will see is the truth coming out on January 6th. You will see, you will see the truth coming out on COVID, Jerry, the work you've done. And we're not taking no financial, but we've got to take it a lot more than that. We can subpoena, we can get people under oath. They've got to have consequences when they mistake the truth.
Yeah.
So no more Hillary Clinton's getting away. No more, just being able to lie with impunity and act like it's the truth. And it couldn't come quick enough. We have got our work cut out for us, but we're up to it with people like Scott and the 20 of us that are not going anywhere. And we've got the votes now to stop anything. 218 has got to go through us. And it's going to be fun to see, and it'll be a gnashing of the teeth, and it's a blood sport.
Todd, can I weigh in here?
Sure.
So
Wow.
I'm from Pennsylvania. If you watched a guy named Mark Houck, a wonderful father, a guy that a street side evangelist protesting at an abortion clinic, counseling folks as they go to the clinic, was arrested by the FBI. 20 or so armed agents, long rifles, the riot shields, all that stuff show up at his house in the early hours of the morning. He's got 7 children and his wife sleeping in there, banging on the door. The gentleman said, and his attorney said, look, if you want us, we'll come down and we'll turn ourselves in if that's what it's going to be. But they want this show of force, right? They want this show of force. What average citizens need to just at some point be willing to acknowledge and accept that every single facet of the federal government is weaponized against every single one of us. And if there's nothing else that we need to be fighting for, is our sovereignty. Our national sovereignty, our state sovereignty, and our personal sovereignty. The government doesn't have the right to tell you that you can't buy a gas stove, but that you must buy an electric vehicle.
Right.
That you can't go to work, but you must put some experimental potion in your arm and then keep showing up to do that, to visit your church or worship. Our personal sovereignty is what this nation was built on, and it's the foundation. It is under assault by every single facet of the government, and as Ralph has said, we are going to create a firestorm. Look, if it's up to me, there's going to be a firestorm. These leftists, these Marxists that have prevailed upon the American people and used the awesome power of the federal government to cow us into fear in our homes, they've got to be put on notice. They've got to be quaking in fear. They've got to be worried. They've got to be losing weight because they're not eating, because they're worried that they're going to end up going to jail for using the awesome power of the federal government. And if they're not interested in showing up in Mr. Jordan's hearing, you know what? I'm in charge now on the Transportation Committee of Federal Leases. Isn't that something? I wonder whose leases might be coming. Well, we're taking a look at the list. It's going to be awesome when they go from a big building to about, I don't know, that space on the square there, Todd. That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
I love it.
Like we got a fight on every corner, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, Congressman Norman, it's fighting and knowing how to fight. And one of the things I really admired about former President Trump is that he taught Republicans, you can fight, and it's okay to fight back, especially against the mainstream media.
Well, look at what he did in 4 years, what Donald Trump did in the face of adversity at every level. The headwinds he faced, he was successful. Look what he did on the Supreme Court. Look what he did with Israel. Look what he did with cutting regulations. The man was unbelievable. And the thing, when I saw the raid at Mar-a-Lago, the cameras, the FBI, and compare that to when they found Biden's, all of the documents he had, where was the media? Where was the FBI? They kept it quiet early on, didn't let it out.
Yeah.
The job of the next president is going to be getting rid of the insiders that are undermining this government. And you've got to clean house. You cannot continue You cannot continue with those around him that are supposedly your friends. And it's at all levels, to be honest with you. That's where y'all come in. The fact that, you know, when I was and I'm a developer by trade, but before I got in politics, I didn't know how two people affected the politicians. On the other side, y'all scare them to death. When you go to that school board meeting, get 3 or 4 people and question them. When you go to that city council meeting, that's the value y'all bring. And don't think it doesn't have a ripple effect at all levels of government. And how you take it from here empowers us to do the right thing. And it's a great, we got more opportunity now than I've ever seen.
Guys, I want to talk about the border. Back in the day, they used to call people from one country coming across the border of another country without that country's invitation. That was called an invasion. They used to fight something called wars over that. And I know that just recently, Republicans holding hearings down on the border, Democrats boycotted. What are we facing now at the border? Let's just cut right to the chase. How bad is it down there?
Well, the cartels are running the border. The cartels have operational control of the United States-Mexico border, and you don't come across the border unless you go through the cartels. So it doesn't matter who you're paying. Some pay, obviously everybody pays money, but some, whether they pay at that time or they come into the United States and then have their families dispersed back to the cartels. Of course, some are mules. They're bringing in fentanyl. The border is being rushed over here with people being brought in illegally to draw the attention of the Border Patrol, who's not sent there to stop them. They're sent there to greet them. Meanwhile, over on this side of the border where there isn't anybody, they're running this fentanyl in that's killing 100,000 Americans, over 100,000 Americans a year. That's a staggering number. I understand in 10 years of the Vietnam War, we lost 55,000, right? So 100,000 in 1 year from fentanyl. The crime that comes with
epidemic.
it, and of course the imposition of these folks that are destitute, and we all want to help, but you know, you see the inflation numbers, and you see the own economy that you have to deal with. This is all caused by a wide open border, and it's a breach of state sovereignty, of our national sovereignty. If we don't have a border, we don't have a country. And the president will tell you, Mayorkas, Secretary Mayorkas will say, we're doing all we can. It's a flat out lie. If you look at the numbers, Todd, if you look at the numbers, when President Trump left office, the numbers doubled, tripled, quadrupled, now 5 times. The Border Patrol's mission didn't change. The laws didn't change. Faithfully execute. The Constitution says the executive will faithfully execute the laws. He's not executing any of the laws. He's welcoming these folks from over 150 countries into our country illegally and then having you pay for them.
Wow.
Congressman.
Wow.
We've been, both of us have been to the border, and imagine this. I'm from South Carolina. The Clemson football stadium and South Carolina holds about 90,000 people. We have 5 of full football stadiums coming across our border unfettered over every country across the globe.
Wow.
And think how unfair that is. And as Scott has mentioned, it's all intentional. For Mayorkas at a hearing I asked him, have we got a secure border? Yes. I said, well, define unsecure. Crickets. He couldn't explain it. But, you know, the only way to stop the fentanyl, and I don't know whether y'all saw, I just saw it this morning, Biden laughing at the mother who had 2 sons to die. And he's basically laughing and saying the fentanyl came from the previous administration. Who cares where it came from? The fact is, it's here. You stop it. And the only way you stop it is what President Trump did, build a wall, which has already been paid for, have a designated point of entry. The American people, and it's going to be hard when the cities and municipalities start coming to the federal government, as New York City has already done. I think they're $50 million over budget because of all the illegals going on the social programs. It's unfair to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
And it's time to fight it, and we're going to do what we can, but until the change
We're not going to pay for it, Ralph. We're not paying for it.
Right. Right.
They can ask, New York can ask all they want.
Biden can pay for it.
They can get somebody else to pay for it.
Yeah, Biden can.
Gentlemen, I wanted to ask about, speaking of security, and not only an invasion of the ground border, but our airspace, and you had the Chinese spy balloon. Then all of a sudden the Biden administration is shooting hot air balloons like it's duck season, and now nothing. And I'm wondering if you guys can give us any insight into what was really going on.
Well, I will tell you that. So I'm trying to figure out where I can get into stay out of the classified and get into what you probably already know. Look, China's testing the United States of America because weakness is provocative, right? We're weak, and they want to see what they can get away with, and that's what they're doing. And there's absolutely no reason this story that, well, we let it cross the country because it was going to be unsafe to shoot it down prior to that. They knew this thing was coming when it was over the Pacific Ocean. And then, well, we needed to make sure we recovered it, to make sure what was on it, and to make sure we knew what they were doing. That's like allowing a burglar to come into your house to see what they'll take and then maybe greet them, I guess, before they get in their car and say, well, I just want to take an inventory here of what you got. This is all absurd. These are breaches by an enemy into our national sovereignty, our national airspace, and they need to be met with maximum force.
And again, I know that Speaker McCarthy said a couple of months back that he's seen nothing that Biden's done that would be worthy of impeachment, but it seems violating the oath of office and not protecting this nation from enemies, foreign and domestic, and letting that balloon invade our airspace, that is worthy of impeachment.
It is.
Among a slew of other things.
All of us face. You impeach Biden for mentally he's not here. But look who you get, the giggler.
Oh gosh.
Her.
Please no.
And on the balloon.
You call her the giggler?
The giggler.
Oh gosh, the cackler.
And everything.
The witch.
But the problem that we've got, and we interviewed General Kellogg, who. You see him on Fox all the time. He's a no-nonsense general. He, first of all, said Milley should have been fired a long time ago, and he was a traitor. But he said, but get this, look where they shot it down. He brought this up. He said, over Alaska, over Montana, the only thing you might hit is a deer or an antelope. But he said the fallacy of shooting it down over the ocean, salt water and electronics don't go together, and getting it at the bottom of the sea, that was all planned. I mean, how much intelligence can they gather under salt water, under the sea, and the cost of that? So none of it makes sense. And I'm in South Carolina. Duke Power is like 15 minutes from my house. Guess where the balloon was over? Duke Power. Guess where Shaw Air Force Base is in Sumter? Guess where the balloon was over? I mean, it's the.
And they read it literally and say, what high crime has the President, War Secretary Mayorkas, or some judge committed? And the Democrats don't look at it that way, because you're not really having a criminal trial. It's a political trial. That's what it is. And so I think Republicans, again, need to acknowledge the enemy that we face, unfortunately, the Marxists in our country, and we're going to have to get right with the circumstance that we're going to have to use all the tools that we have in our tool belt. We have Republicans that just say, well, show me in the criminal code what crime or misdemeanor that this person committed. Well, show me in the criminal code which crime or misdemeanor President Trump committed. It didn't stop them from dragging that guy through the country across the coals for absolutely. Not only was there no crime, they made everything up. They're the ones that should be on trial. We need to get in the fight, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Folks, aren't you glad we've got the House Freedom Caucus on the fight? I mean, this is what it's all about here. I want to go back, though, Congressman, to something you said when we started this conversation. You believed that these were not failures of the Biden administration. These were intentional. You mentioned Marxism a lot. And I'm wondering, what is the end game here? Because we're seeing a lot of chaos in the culture. We're seeing a lot of unrest in our major American cities. Memphis, where we're based, the deadliest city in America. What is the end game with this administration?
To me, the model is, it's Marxism, it's socialism, it's control over your lives. If you just take a look at some of the recent events, they essentially crashed the healthcare system so government could take it over, and government has taken it over, right? You look at law enforcement, they're trying to crash that. They want federal police.
They want more and more control, and so there's a model by which they do this, and they look at every single system that's important in your life, every traditional role that citizens play, that government has played. It's all under assault, Todd, because that's the model that they use. And they've done the long march through the institutions. They're doing the long march, or they're essentially completed the long march through the boardrooms now. So your investments, you're investing in ESG, whether you like it or not. And you can't, if you want to own a gun store and get financing, you can't. If you want to be a wildcatter drilling a rig, or with a drilling rig, drilling and prospecting for oil and gas, you cannot, because you can't get financing. This is the theme that's going to just reverberate through our economy, through our country, through our culture, through the education system. They crashed that, and they took it over. And, and it started at the higher level, but now you've got, right here in Loudoun County, you got Scott Smith. His daughter was sexually assaulted. He goes to the school board to see what the heck's going on and demand some resolution to it. I'm going to just tell you, I got 2 daughters, calm as Scott Smith. If something like that happens to my kids, I'm just going to tell you. They arrest him. They arrest him.
Wow.
Yeah. This is their goal.
Congressman, and Norman, we're going to start with you, and I'll give you the last word, Congressman Perry, as we wrap up our time here. You've got some red-blooded American patriots here. They put Red Bull on the Fruit Loops this morning. They came, and they want to know, what do we do? How do we get engaged? How do we fight? What do you tell this great group?
First of all, everybody here has got a talent. And, you don't realize the power that you have and how 1 or 2 people can make a difference. And I would say, if you're inclined to run for office, do what we do, run for office. But if your inclination is, if you got small children, as Scott said, they're taking our children over. Our children are not safe. What's happening to them in the education system is evil. And so get involved with who goes on the school board. Get involved with who goes on the city council. Interview these candidates. Call in your state reps. And you can't do it with one person. Get 3 or 4 or 5 groups, scare people, particularly politicians. Get them in there, and I will tell you it pays dividends. And recruit people. How do you think? I was recruited. I'm sure Scott at some point was recruited. Everything starts with a question and a conversation. So everybody has got a talent. Get behind candidates, but we cannot. The thing that's gotten us in trouble today is people. And we got weak people, put up candidates. The power, and as Scott said, what we're losing is our democracy and our freedom. We cannot let that happen. If not America, where?
So for me, I'm going to break it down to spending as a member of Congress. Spending, standards, sovereignty. We're not going to keep bankrupting the country. Me and Ralph are not voting to bankrupt the country. We're done with that. We're going to drag our friends screaming and kicking with that. Standards. We got to maintain, you got to have some standard, whether it's in the military, in your daily life. My pronouns are him and he, and there isn't any other. That's it. I'm a man, and I'm not. That's it. Woo! Sovereignty. National sovereignty of our country, state sovereignty. The states are sovereign. Your personal sovereignty. We are done with the government at all levels telling us what we can do with our bodies and our lives, and we got to fight for it. That's what the Freedom Caucus is going to do. Thank you for being in the fight with us.
And ladies and gentlemen, please thank our good friends, Congressman Ralph Norman and Congressman Scott Perry.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome back to CPAC, everybody. Day 1 here. I am Alex Caldwell here with the co-founder of the lovely donation website Give, Send, Go, Jacob Wells. Jacob, thank you for coming on today. It's an honor to have you.
Alex, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Of course. Could you tell our viewers a little bit about Give, Send, Go and your journey with the platform that you have?
Yeah, so Give, Send, Go was started back in 2014. I'm one of 12 children, large family, 6 boys, 6 girls, even split. And we had a vision for a platform that wasn't just all about me, because we realized that our society today pushes all about me, narcissism, that kind of idea. And we realized giving was about community. It was about going into the world, doing great things. It was about all of these, and it was about givers empowering people to do those things. So 2014, me and 2 siblings came together. We said, let's build a platform to compete with some of these other crowdfunding platforms that we're developing. And we just took a step. None of us had a background in anything like that. I was a military veteran, had gotten out, and we were just saying, hey, there's an opportunity here. So let's build a platform around hope while helping people. And we started the journey then. 2016 is when we kicked off. And then fast forward 4 years later, growing year over year, dealing with the complexities of building a business. And then 2020 came, and we were thrust into a big national spotlight when Kyle Rittenhouse was deplatformed from every fundraising platform, every platform in essence, and his campaign found a way to give, send, go, and raised a whole bunch of money because we said, well, a legal defense fund, there's nothing illegal about raising money for a legal defense fund. So that really pushed us, and now there's been a whole bunch of other things since then.
2022.
Right.
You had the Freedom Convoy in Canada with the truckers.
Right.
At first, the truckers, they were trying to raise money through a website called GoFundMe. Your main competitor, your main rival.
Right.
GoFundMe said no. All the money, they said no.
Raised fine. So they set up the campaign, and literally within a couple hours, millions of